Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Sandman, Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, picking up in the aftermath of last episode, Dream is looking at his fallen kingdom. And obviously, Lucien says that she tried recording things after he had disappeared, but eventually the library disintegrated. All the pages to the books turned blank. And it is interesting from Dream's perspective that the librarian decided to stay when the library was no more. It's like, it is interesting that literally everyone else left except for you, Cain, and Abel, but they might not be able to leave. Which begs the question, I'm assuming is Lucien a dream as well? Well, because later on there's like, so I wonder, do nightmares turn into dreams? Or I guess we all have our like notion of what a nightmare is, because later on he says like, oh, Gregory's was a nightmare. So I'm like, didn't Gregory become a nightmare that shifted into a dream? Or is it just like nightmare isn't the negative connotation that you think it is? That maybe it is to think of, yes, you serve a role to be this scary thing, but that doesn't define all that you are. When you're not, you're just kind of it's a title. It's kind of it's a job description that you, whereas Gregory probably doesn't lean into being a nightmare, the Corinthian does. So maybe that's what the correlation is. But I'm curious about why Lucien is the only one that decided to stay. Why? Well, no, because now in retrospect, it's like, no, because Lucien can't be a dream or a nightmare, because Dream tried to rebuild his kingdom, bring everything back, but his powers are severely weakened. And I think this is going to be an important lesson for him over the course of the season. But that line of I'm powerless without my tools. I don't even know who I am without them. You know, because so it's like, right, they kind of act as I guess being trapped, like sucked away all of his powers, or maybe his power is directly tied to these tools. Maybe it's like, right, to kind of balance things out, maybe he divided his power in these three magical tools. It's almost interesting because like, there's a parallel to like Japanese mythology that are kind of tied to like three different items. I can never remember. I think it's a sword, a shield, and a mirror, if I remember correctly. They're like three sacred items in like, I think it's not Shinto Buddhism, is it? I think it might just be Japanese mythology in general, but I think like there's three specific items. Like I said, I think a sword, a shield, and a mirror, but I could be 100% misremembering that. Either way, it kind of reminds me of that, and it makes me wonder, is that what that is? Because we haven't really gotten into it, because these are questions I were rummaging through my mind, because Lucien's like, cool, you could ask one of your siblings for help, but it's like, no, we each have our own realms that we're supposed to look after. But she's like, yeah, but you're the only one that kind of adheres to that. Your siblings have kind of interfered in other regards. He's like, my siblings? There's no way in over like 100 years they didn't know my circumstances, and none of them lifted a finger to help me. It's like, yeah, you'd have a chip on your shoulder about that. Like, once again, I think he is kind of a little stubborn, where it's just kind of like he's very stuck in his way, and just like maybe you could almost treat him like a petulant child in that regard. But there is this stubbornness of like he won't accept help from other people, because it's like, no, they didn't help me. Like, I can't trust them. How can I go ask them for help? Because they didn't even bother coming to help me. They don't care about me. So who can, you know? And obviously everything with Alex and Roderick, like how he handled that was his stubbornness. You know, once again, maybe that's just me leaning too pessimistically into Dream, but I think it speaks volumes about his character. And I think that's also why the Corinthian has like his issues with Dream. He says like, no, he doesn't give a fuck about any of us. He's selfish. All he cares about is himself and his kingdom. It's like, yo, why is he rebuilding the kingdom? Not for the sake of his people, the dreams and the nightmares. It's like, no, it's for his own ego, to have something and someone to rule over. And, you know, it's like, it's all about him. It's not about us, you know, which I'm wondering, will that eventually lead to Lucien potentially questioning her own loyalty? I mean, why does she have such undying loyalty to him? But also, really quickly, going back to the point I was making, she can't be a dream or a nightmare. She has got to be a being of some other situation, because he can only reabsorb things that he's made. So she's not a creation, just like Cain and Abel aren't his creations. So it makes you wonder what Lucien is then. Like, she has to be a being from another world. because she has like pointy ears, but it looks like Cain and Abel do too. So I'm wondering, is there some correlation there? This mythology of this universe, I'm assuming it says we're including Cain and Abel. I'm curious, like, this seems like it's going to be pulling from different mythologies and religions if we're including Cain and Abel, as they talk about first murder and first victim, which I've never heard Cain and Abel described like that. Maybe they have been. I mean, I've watched, obviously, they pop up in Lucifer, they pop up in Supernatural, but it's just, I've never heard that specifically, like them labeling themselves as that. Maybe they have been, but I've just never heard that. But basically, he wants to summon the Hecate, the sisters of fate, the three who are one, the one who are three. But he needs power to do it, so he has to go reabsorb his sand from Gregory, because it has to be. Gregory's the only creation of his that's left intact that he can draw upon, because everything else is in ruin. And because you even see at some point, like there is kind of like this sand below, but it's like it's not enough. Like it's lost its power. Without him at full strength, he can't control everything and manipulate it to be what it once was. So he ends up having to get rid of Gregory, which is very heartbreaking, because they were like, no, he was like part of our family, and especially because I want to say it was Cain that was chewing out Morpheus. He was like, because at first it's like, your lordship, we knew that you would come back. We're so happy to see you back. But it's like, no, you can't do this. It's like, right, you don't know, while you were gone, you don't know what we've lost. And then you almost have Dream looking at him like, what you've lost? He was like, yes. And it's like, he didn't say anything, but he could easily be like, what lost? What about the time I was in captivity? Like, what I've lost? I've lost everything. You think you're the only one that's lost. And it's like, but also, I'm not asking your permission. I'm asking Gregory, and Gregory agreed. And Abel was, being like, right, I support your decision, but Cain was like, this isn't fair. And Morpheus is like, yes, I know, it's not, but I need to restore this kingdom what it was. And like, legitimately, even though you just got introduced to Gregory being the gargoyle, because at first I was like, oh, your dragon's like a gargoyle. I'm like, oh, that's cute. Which again, I guess that kind of plays into the whole being a nightmare thing, being a gargoyle. I feel like you typically won't see a gargoyle represented in like a dream-like whimsical light. But even though there was kind of like this whimsy to it, I legitimately was kind of actually getting super sad. I was like, oh, that's actually heartbreaking. And he ends up taking the sand and going to those waters. She's like, and Lucian was like, are you sure you want to navigate these, sir? Like, they're darker than what they once were. And once again, I just love the like fantastical elements of just like how wild this is, and especially the whole water situation, because he drops it in the sand and there's his reflection. Basically, he has to make an offering to the sisters, and so he has to basically pull the offerings. He can't make them himself. He has to pull them from the dreams of others. He ended up pulling a crossroad. What was it? The noose from a hanging, a serpent, and then there was also an egg. And he paid the 3 offerings to them, which they had their beef with him, because it's like, yo, you didn't help us with the whole Cersei thing. But it's like, oh, sister, the Cersei thing was like so long ago. Let's not even worry about it. It's like, oh, but you look so thin. You need something to eat. Are you hungry? It's like, yeah, he's hungry, but not for that. So gets one question. Finds out that the sand was given to Joanna Constantine, which the moment I heard that, I was like, DJ Wooldridge has to be out there feeling vindicated. I'm just saying this because, like, most people, at least my understanding, say Constantine. DJ Wooldridge, back in the, like, source-fed nerd days, always pushed the whole, like, no, it's like, because, like, wasn't it Alan Moore specifically that always referred to the character as Constantine, or, like, that's the actual proper pronunciation, how it originally was? So he always pushed that, but eventually he kind of was like, all right, I concede, and just went with the Constantine thing. But it's like, yeah, I feel like he probably won't remember that, or maybe he does, but probably doesn't matter to him. But I feel like that's always stuck in my head, the whole Constantine of it all. So, like, them using that pronunciation. I guess, like, the Constantine would just be, like, kind of like the Americanization of it, and Constantine would be like the more Britishization of it. I mean, either way. But Dream knows of, like, yeah, I knew a Johanna Constantine 300 years ago. What's going on there? It's like, one question, one answer. Okay. Where's my helm? someone traded it to a demon. One question, one answer. Okay. And what about the ruby? It's like, well, passed from mother to child. Well, do you not hear us the first 2 times? One question, one answer, we're done. And then there was the egg left. I was like, it's a baby gargoyle, isn't it? Like, to give back to Cain and Abel. Like, you were able to pull this from the dreams of others. So, which, the moment Cain ended up killing Abel, I was like, this isn't your first time killing him. It's like, no, they're stuck in their cycle. It's very much like Zelda and Hilda from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Zelda killing Hilda all the time, literally burying her so she can resurrect. I wonder, is burying him part of the process? Just much like Hilda, you have to bury her in that specific place or she won't resurrect. So I'm wondering, is that the same thing that's applicable in this regard? Like, that's the only way Abel will ever be able to come back to life. No matter how pissed off he is, Cain always buries his brother. But I love that he's like, oh, I appreciate you didn't bury me that deep this time. And now they had the gargoyle he wants to call Irving, but Cain is like, no, they have to have G names. And he's like, well, we can call him Gerving. And Cain's like, Gerving. And then just like stabs him with a poker. And I'm like, and he tells that story, which is very heartbreaking, because he's like, right, we're stuck in this cycle. And it's like, yeah, my brother, I know he loves me. I mean, yeah, he kills me, but it's like, yeah, he's not going to kill me before lunch. And he talks about, like, right, brothers that don't ever fight, they get along, they're happy, they live in the same house together, is what he wants. But I think their story is so written in stone that there is no changing that. I mean, it makes you wonder, would the cycle break? Like, if he killed Cain, would it break their cycle? But Cain would probably stay dead because it would destroy everything that they are. Maybe that through line will come back. Maybe this isn't just an introduction. Maybe we haven't seen the last of this. Maybe we have. I don't know. I'm interested to see how that plays out. But it's an interesting introduction to their story in that regard. On the flip side of things, we have the Corinthian visiting Ethel, which I was like, hey, who's played by Jolie Richardson, which I had no idea. Had no idea she was Natasha Richardson's sister. I only found that out recently, but I've seen her. Some stuff here and there. Is that short-lived show The Rook is one thing I know for sure. Obviously, most recently, like, she's made at least 2 appearances in The Blacklist. Like, even this past season, she was on The Blacklist. So that's what made me kind of look her up to be like, oh, like, I had no idea. Once again, and I thought it was interesting finding out she was Ethel, and I was like, well, wouldn't Ethel be? I mean, like, yeah, she's older, but she's not that much older. It's like, okay, so, like, her aging has been, like, slowed. I don't know if she's necessarily, like, probably not immortal, because it's probably just like but she probably, like, ages extremely slowly. It's probably what that comes down to. And the Corinthian is there to be like, oh, like, hey, Dream is free, and he's coming for both of us, so we might want to, like, work together. And it's like, yeah, let's get the tools. And she's like, why, you want to use them? He's like, I can't. Because they're both, I guess because either the tools are also made from, like, the same dream and nightmare stuff like he is, because, like, we're basically made of the same stuff, or at the very least, they're tools that help make beings like him. So it's like, I can never utilize them because we're made of the same stuff, but I could teach you how to utilize them. But she had already given away all the other stuff. As we learned, like, she traded the sand and the helm to get a place here in America. Turns out she's the one that traded the helm for an amulet of protection to a demon. So that, and she's also got the ruby, but, like, the ruby doesn't just make dreams come true, but it makes nightmares come true. And it seemed like it corrupted her son, Johnny, who's played by, David, I'm going to butcher, is it like Thules? Most recently saw him on the HBO show Landscapers, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. Check it out. It's only 4 episodes. So that's more recently what I saw him in. But she's got the amulet, and she was able to send the Corinthian back to the dream world. I love the effect of that, especially like him kind of peeling apart piece by piece, and then it's got to be painful as hell getting ripped apart on like such a minute level, and then being reconstituted in a similar fashion back in the dreaming world. But he doesn't have to stay and immediately leaves, because I guess the boundaries between both worlds is so shattered because Dream isn't there to keep everything in line, doesn't have the power to kind of close those gates. So dreams, even in nightmares, if they get sent back there, they can just easily go because the portal to the realm is so... I mean, maybe the Corinthians always had his secret passage in and out of the dream realm into the waking world. But Lucian tried to stop him, like, right, he will come after you. And it's like, well, let him, because he might not be the one coming back. Because I sure as hell never coming back. Just like, once again, he doesn't care about us. Like, the fact is, you can't help him. You can't save him either. And I guess maybe Lucian's trying to save him from himself of this path of isolation that he's kind of been on for so long and continues to be down, as he's trying to collect his objects. You know, he planned to go see Johanna, which Lucian's like, is that really a good idea? You were just in London. You were there for like 100 years. It's like, yeah, but this human, her ancestor served me well in the past, so her ancestor will serve me well present day, which, once again, I love that her, Joanna Constantine is played by, Jenna Coleman. Like, the moment I saw her in the trailers, I was like, yeah! I was like, that's awesome. But it's like, oh, like, what could these mortals do? She's only human or something like that. Which Lucian's like, yeah, but didn't you say the same thing of Roderick? Like, what could go wrong? And it's like, once again, like, he does see humans as less than. So that's why I'm like, it does play into, like, when you're being a celestial being of this magnitude, when you're one of the endless, it feels like you have to, you know, you feel the need to remind people, because it's like, right, the dreams and everything in this realm they've left, they need to be reminded of who their master is. You know, that, you know, maybe it's not just for their sake, it's for his own sake, you know, because he is, you know, as he said, lost without his tools. Like, who am I? What am I without them? So, and also that effect of, like, the water splitting and him walking and just kind of disappearing and it teleporting him to London. It's kind of pretty nice. But at the same time, we have Ethel visiting Johnny. It seems like she's got him locked up in a hospital. Seems like she's more so the one having the, some form of immortality. Once again, I think it's just slow aging. Doesn't seem like Johnny has that necessary benefit. But it seems like, once again, the ruby did corrupt him. And she's like, we have to talk about that. Because it's like, right, who's to say Dream finds out that the child of one of the man who captured him. It's like, well, we saw what happened to Alex, and I'm curious, has she gotten word about that? Maybe, maybe not. But it's like, right, she wants to protect her son, despite probably all that he's done because of the ruby's corruption, because she needs to help him. But he's like, oh, like, you want to like say all this stuff. You're trying to be kind to me. You're talking about this not being a prison but a hospital. You're saying all that. Are you doing that to try and convince me or yourself to make you feel better about putting me here? So it seems definitely like that situation of a mother trying to protect her son, but he's probably done very monstrous things, or is kind of monstrous, and she has the power and money and position and connections to make it possible to protect him. Like, what mother wouldn't do that for their child? And especially knowing that a powerful being like Dream is coming after you, but he's got to get the objects one at a time, because he needs his sand so that he can go to hell, because he's got to find the demon that has his helm. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. I'm so excited. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.